Go to TAPgiles.com to learn dreams, engage my services, and support the channel. Now we're going to have a look at the HUD compass demo. Let's just have a look at what that does. So you've got this compass at the top, and it shows you north, west, south and east, and you could have like little notches or make it look however you want. And it also has these markers in the world, so like that's the fountain, and that's the mountain, and that's the exit or something, and you've got a marker on a moving NPC, and it works just as well. So as it's in front, it will be like shown, and when it's behind, then it won't be shown, and then it will come around again. Now it's shown again, yay! So this one kind of method will work for all those kind of cases. And as these are actually quite close, you can kind of see them. It's not just perfectly west, and it kind of drifts off because it's always trying to target that object. If it was super far away, like an actual mountain, it wouldn't change much at all. So we've got a character here. We're going to put the UI into this character, and it's all going to be in a timeline. So there's a trick with a timeline where if you just send it a signal, you can actually control the playhead of the timeline. So I've just got this value slider, I'll wire it into the playhead, and now I can send it a signal which is a percentage through that I want the playhead to be at, and it will just be at that position. It won't play or anything. If I play time, nothing will happen. It will just go to that spot through the timeline. So we're going to have things displayed in here, and then we're going to control the playhead so that it displays at the right times depending on other logic that we're going to set up. So we'll just delete that. First I'll make the north letter. So I'm just going to quickly make a template. So I guess I'll use that one. And that's for the center. And that for the end. So we've got a plus in the middle, and we're going to put it at the top, center, top, and widen out. And now we've got a kind of gauge as to how wide we want this to be, and also where the center is, so that we can kind of get the movement of the cardinal direction letters to be correct. So I'll just play and pause, and now that will just be on the screen. I'll take off the background and stuff, and fade out the text. There we go. And now I'll add the north over here, and just put in N, and I'll just leave it at the top like that, and then we'll keyframe it to different points along the top. So I'm going to click on clock time, which turns it into beats mode, which means you have these kind of big columns to kind of snap to. It makes laying these things out properly a bit easier. So let's zoom in here, and we use a keyframe to set this to be, that's the leftmost position, and another keyframe here to be at the rightmost position, and then use L1 and X between them, and it adds a line. This is like it blends now, so if I click on that, you can drag this, and I'll play and pause again, and you can see that it will be at a different spot depending on where the playhead is. I'll also, just for fun, I'm going to make it fade out. So it's going to be full opacity during the middle, and at the edges it's going to fade out to 0. So it will be 0 normally, and I'll use up on the D-pad to scale this up. Go back on beats mode. And you've got these handles, so I'll just put that to there and that to there, and that means this keyframe will be less powered at this end and then become more powered, and then less powered at that end. So if I grab the playhead, you can see at the edges it starts to fade out, which is kind of cool, and in the middle it's full strength. So now if we controlled this somehow with a signal, so this was the angle of the camera, then depending on the angle, it will show in a different spot along the thing. So let's just do that part now. So to put something at the camera, I'm going to use a head/camera tracker, and this just moves with the camera perfectly. So for example, if I made something visual, put it over there. So that will follow the camera perfectly now. If I go here, it's now just stuck to the camera. So I can put some logic at that spot and it will follow the camera perfectly. So I'm going to put a chip there first in the center of it. And then I want a tag to be there. So we've got a tag, and a tag it isn't just like a name. You can give it a name and detect it with the trigger zone and so on, but it's actually a position in the world. So depending on where the camera is, this will be in that spot, kind of offset to this amount or whatever. It also has like a rotation, and we're going to use the rotation to figure out the angle of the camera. So I'll just put a triangle on that. So so it has the scene space transform, which is all the values and stuff going on with where it is and the rotation and the scale if it has any. But we only want one part of it. So if we go into a splitter, so you can see all those values going through as different colors, and there's tons of different colors because there's tons of different values. And they're all grouped into position and rotation or orientation and scale. So we want the orientation, but only one part of it. There's three different parts to the orientation. One is yaw, which is left and right like that, as if you're shaking your head. And pitch, which is up and down, as if you are nodding your head. And roll, as if you are doing a barrel roll in an airplane. So we want the yaw, which is left and right. So if we just test this to make sure we know what's going on, I'm going to use a number displayer and just show you what that gives us. So that's displayed on the side, and as it looks left, it gives us positive numbers, and right, it gives us negative numbers. And it goes all the way around to 180 and then flips back down to minus 180, because it's kind of assuming that you went the other way, sort of thing. So now we've got this value that represents the angle of the camera. Instead of this tag, you can actually use an output from the head tracker itself, the head position, which isn't just the position as the name implies, but it's actually the full transform. So it has the position and the rotation and the scale. So we can use that. And the tricky thing with that is you can't just play time and kind of move it around to see what happens. You have to go into test mode or play mode to see. So now we can see it kind of rotates around until it gets to minus 180 and then flips around to 180 and goes back down to 0. So we can say that north is in this direction like that at 0. We want to send this out to things. So we want anything in the scene to know the angle of the camera. So let's go and use some Wi-Fi gadgets. I'm going to use a receiver to send things out. The Wi-Fi stuff has a receiver and a transmitter, and if they're looking at the same name, then they can talk to each other. So we can name the transmitter view yaw, and then in the receiver we can type that same thing in or press up and down on the D-pad to go through the transmitter names. So now we've got view yaw, and we don't care where the camera is in relation to whatever's using it, so we'll just put this into scene mode. And just from personal preference mainly, I like to use the receiver just once. So I'm going to send it through signal to the transmitter, and then signal from the receiver will be that yaw value. So I'll use this down here, and we can wire that into the displayer to just see what's happening. Yep, so that still works. And so we're getting minus 180 to plus 180. For now, I'm going to not worry about it being like actually perfect. I'm just going to scale it down so that it becomes a percentage and we can use it with this timeline. So for that, I tend to use a signal manipulator. Put that over there, wire it in, and use the custom remapper mode. So this has like an input range and an output range. We know the input range is minus 180. And I'll just do it roughly for now because we'll be changing it in a bit anyway. So plus 180. Okay, and then that goes from 0 to 1, which is a percentage. So we wire that in there and pin it to the screen. We can watch as it changes depending on our angle. So as we rotate round, when we're looking in this direction, it's putting N at the top in the middle. And as we rotate round, it disappears and then it comes back again when it's needed. Like that. So now we have the first steps in making this compass HUD thing at the top of the screen. But we don't have just one letter, we have multiple letters. So I'm going to put this into another timeline, and this is going to hold north, east, south and west. And I'm going to actually set this to half the width like that. So for 180 of it, so think of this as 360, this full range. We want half of it to show the north, and at a quarter mark it's going to show that north is ahead. And then for the other half of it, it's not going to show north at all. You could adjust that however you want, but that's how I'm going to set it up. So I'm going to put that into this parent timeline. So I'll remove that into this parent timeline, put into beats mode as well, and we'll control that parent timeline. It'll behave exactly the same, and the timeline will move the playhead to depending on the camera angle. So that's good. And now we can add another letter though, just by copying this and moving it along, and we give it a different letter. Call that east, and we'll make that the thinner font like that. And yeah, so that's the east one, that's the north one. Let's test that. So north is coming, and then east comes like that. So if you want them to be overlapping, you can do that. So if you cycle all the way around, we'll get back to north, and east is showing at these kind of quarter marks. And let's make south and west. Cool. But I want to kind of adjust it so that instead of, so I want, right now, north is like in this angle, but I want north to be like perfectly dead on there or something. First I'm going to make this easier to line up, I'm going to set these to loop. And now I can just pick any slice I want out of this with these trim handles, and I can just drag these with X. So now we're actually getting like half of that and half of that, and this is kind of 3/4 of the way through, but it doesn't matter because they loop perfectly. So there's no like flickering when it goes round to the other side. It still works fine. So now we've got north is perfectly that way, east is perfectly that way, south and west. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something interesting. Go to patreon.com/TAPgiles to learn something new every day.